Hello, Garland Nixon here, and it seems as though there seem to be, at minimum, some military minds that are having second thoughts about going at it with China and wiping out the entire U.S. economy and all kinds of bad stuff like that. Let's talk. Well, Garland here, and yeah, it appears to me that at minimum, there are those in the military who are having second thoughts about the crazy neocons. I think some of it may very well be that they're looking at what's happening in Ukraine. They're looking at the outcome of the neocons' misadventures all over the world, and they're getting concerned that these people are idiots and they're going to drag us into complete, absolute, and total disaster. Best case scenario, the United States will be dragged into to complete disaster. Worst case of scenario, the entire world could be wiped out. So I think that there are those in the military who are looking at this and having second thoughts, having questions. Let's look at a little bit of what's going on here. Some of the things we're starting to see, some of the indicators. Let's start with this one. Um, Here's an article, CBS News, so you know it's mainstream. The bizarre secret behind China's a spy balloon. That leads you to believe that something is going to be bizarre and it's going to be a secret, right? And of course, China's spy balloon. They're still saying, here we are today, yesterday, saying a spy balloon. It was surely the most bizarre crisis of the Biden administration. America's top of the line jet fighters being sent up to shoot down, of all things, a balloon. A Chinese spy balloon that was floating across the United States, which had the nation and its politicians in a tizzy. Well, the media had the nations and its politician in a tizzy. There were a lot of us who were saying, "You got to be kidding me." Come on. It's a freaking balloon, a weather balloon. The Chinese, apparently, we came to find out the Chinese had contacted the Americans. It said, look, hey, man, we got this weather balloon. We put it up in the air. You can't steer it. So it seems to have been caught in a bad wind and it's floating across the U.S. There's another one coming. There's one going across South America. There's no problem, no fuss, no muss. These are just friggin' weather balloons. And the U.S. then took that opportunity to go, no, he did. Oh my God, Xi has attacked us. Now, did he use the most modern and sophisticated technology that could possibly be fitted onto a satellite? Nope. He went back to the 1700s. Spy balloons, right? That was the plan, because, hey, the United States would never figure that out. Now, they didn't tell you that the Chinese had said, hey, we got a weather balloon, it's going to be floating across the U.S. Kind of left that out. They left out that they had been tracking the balloon from when it took off a week before it crossed the U.S. So they saw it go up. Okay, the Chinese putting up another balloon. Hey, it looks like it got caught in it got caught in a wind current. Oh, it's coming over the United States. Bottom line, I know, you know, and the Chinese know that the United States at the time was looking for any rock they could throw to hit the Chinese in the head with. And when they saw a balloon, they're like, yeah, I don't know. The Chinese told us that the balloon was coming. It's just a friggin' weather balloon. What do we do? I think we all think that if the media makes a big deal about it enough and we'll call it a spy balloon, that the American people will bite the hook. And they're like, yeah, let's go for it. It's obvious. So they go on to say, now 7 months later, General Mark Milley, remember that name, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, tells CBS News Morning the balloon wasn't spying. It's interesting. Let's look at at the beginning of this article again. It was our secret behind the Chinese spy balloon. Let's go down here. General Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, tells CBS News Sunday Morning balloon wasn't spying. The intelligence community, their assessment, and it's a high confidence assessment, is there was no intelligence collection by that balloon. So they still call it a spy balloon, but let's continue. So why was it over the United States? There are various theories. Now, keep in mind something. Let's listen to this theory. There are various theories, with at least one leading theory that it was blown off track. Now, a week before the balloon entered U.S. airspace, the Chinese contacted the U.S. and said, hey, we got a weather balloon that's blown off track. We got no way of piloting this thing, of deciding where it goes. It's blown off track, so it's probably going to fly over your airspace. Hey, sorry about that. Nothing we can do about it. It's not nice to fool with Mother Nature, right? You don't blame us, blame the friggin', currents, air currents above the earth. And here, CBS says, why was it blown over the United States? Various theories, and they act like they're being technical here. There are various theories. Brilliant minds have come together. They've taken all the data. They put it into a supercomputer. What's that big supercomputer was for years ago was called Big Blue. Remember that? We've taken all the data that we have. We've entered that data into a supercomputer. We sat around for months watching this supercomputer just rattle off 40 trillion calculations per second, knowing that at some point it would spit something out. And then yesterday at 11:55 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a blue light came onto the computer, and it means that the computer's calculations are complete and it has come to a resolution of the data. And the data says, looks like it was blown off track. Exactly what the Chinese told us a week before it blew off track. And they're like, why was it over the United States? Well, let's see. The Chinese told us it blew off track. Could that be it? Yes, that is it. The balloon had been headed towards Hawaii, but the winds at 60,000 feet apparently took over. Those winds are very high, Millie said. The particular motor on that aircraft can't go against those winds at that altitude. The balloon floated over Alaska and Canada. Floated. I thought it was moving at Mach 11. I thought this balloon was like, a hypersonic balloon. Like the Russians have hypersonic missiles, the Chinese have hypersonic balloons that it was just flying at us, man. I mean, this thing was moving. It was like doing a mile an hour or something, right? And down over the lower 48 to Billings, Montana, where photographer Chase Doak, who had studied photojournalism in college, recorded it from his driveway. Well, what do you know? How about that, right? How about that? Listen to this. This is how highly technical, the kind of technical equipment that you needed to detect this spy balloon. Okay, so this schmug, some schlump by the name of Chase Doak, probably a nice guy, who had studied photojournalism in college, probably community college, took a little journalism. In other words, he had a camera, recorded it from his driveway. And listen to this. I just happened to notice out of the corner of my eye a white spot in the sky. I, of course, landed on the most logical explanation that it was an extraterrestrial craft, he laughed. Took a quick photo. Then I grabbed a few coworkers to make sure that I wasn't seeing things and had them take a look at it. Man, you'll probably never take a more famous picture. No, I don't think I ever will. Let's look at this. There you go. Let's take a quick look at this. There you go. That's it. So this guy, Charles Doak, is standing in his driveway. He looks up and he's like, damn, what's that white spot? It ain't a cloud. I'll grab my camera, probably on his cell phone or something. Hey, hand me the Galaxy S23 there, honey. Sure, here you go. Would you like a sandwich too? I'll get one in a second. Can I have some chips and a drink with that? Sure. Deer Park water? As always. Thanks a lot, honey. And he takes this camera and he points it to the sky because that's what you got to do to catch a spy because they're so well hidden. And up he goes and click. And the rest is history. That's it. That's how the Chinese took us out, with a balloon. He tipped off the Billings Gazette, which got his own picture, and he told anybody who asked they could use free of charge. I didn't want to make anything off it. I thought it was a national security issue and all of America needed to know, right? So a U-2 spy plane tracked the balloon. Blinken called off a trip to China, and he said he called China's decision to fly a surveillance balloon over the United States unacceptable and irresponsible. Now, I'm just saying, some schmug in his driveway looks up and he's like, oh man, there's a white spot. Hey, honey, hand me the phone. Click, there you go. Got it. And they fly over it with like a U-2 spy plane. I'm thinking they can get close enough to look at it and say, remember about a week ago when the Chinese told us that they had a weather balloon that had gone bad? You know, the one that we've been tracking ever since it took off? Yeah. Perhaps that could be this one. Nah, we think that's a spy balloon. That was just a weather balloon there that we've been tracking and all, that happened to take the exact same track as this balloon that we were told was coming. Couldn't possibly be the same balloon. No doubt whatsoever. What we got here is a spy balloon because, the Chinese, they don't like to use highly sophisticated technology. They're not really into satellites and things like that. Balloons, that's what they're going with. So the Air Force shot it down. On paper, it looks like this colossal mismatch. One of the country's most sophisticated jet fighters against a balloon with a putt-putt motor. Was it a sure thing, right? So they go on. After the Navy raised the wreckage from the bottom of the Atlantic, technical experts discovered the balloon sensor had never been activated while over the continental United States. Let's look at this again. China's spy balloon. So then they go on to say, but by then the damage to U.S.-China relations had been done. By whom? By Blinken and the idiots. But because they didn't really care. They were just like, hey, what do you got? I got a piece of candy. It was made in China. My God, they're attacking us with candy now. Call off Blinken's trip to Beijing because, they sent candy over here. What flavor is it? Sour apple. I knew sons of bitches would get us with sour apple candy. I knew it. Now, my man over there said they'd go with black cherry. And Jake felt that they would probably go with grape because, let's face it, he likes grape. I was like, sour apple. That's what they're going with. See, because the Chinese, they know Americans and sour apple is like, apple pie, Chevrolets, things like that, hot dogs, right? So I knew it was sour apple, and son of a bitch, wouldn't you know it? All right. This silly balloon that was carrying 2 freight cars worth of spy equipment was flying over the United States, and it got shot down. Everything changed in terms of talking to one another. So Martin asked, bottom line, it was a spy balloon, but it wasn't spying. Miller replied, I would say it was a spy balloon that we know with high degree of certainty got no intelligence and didn't transmit any intelligence back to China. There you go. So it was a spy balloon. It's just that I guess the Chinese aren't that good at spying because they don't use their spy balloons for spying. Now, I'm just curious. I wonder if they looked onto that computers and found like the barometric pressure, possibly, the wind direction, wind speeds, temperatures at various heights, things that a weather balloon made, data that a weather balloon might want to collect. What do you think? Huh? I'm thinking probably. So that makes it even worse because the Chinese were actually disguising a spy balloon as a weather balloon. And the coup de grace, the thing that would really throw us off, that we would never figure out that it was a spy balloon, and this is brilliant, that they weren't going to use it for spying. Who'd ever figure that out? A spy balloon that was so clandestine. The Chinese are so underhanded and they are so good. Boy, these guys are good that they make up a spy balloon completely disguised as a weather balloon. And then they tell you the spy balloon is on the way, but it's really a weather balloon. And here's the direction it's going, and it's going to fly right over your country. And you're like, hey, that's a spy balloon. They're like, no, it's a weather balloon. Because that they would want you to figure that because they're so devious. And you're like, oh, okay. And then it flies over and you're like, son of a bitch, I knew it. They got us again. There the Chinese go with their freaking spy balloon. And they're like, but it's only a weather balloon. And we get it. We check it out. And they haven't been doing any spying. That's how evil they are. They have, and see, what they do is they send a spy balloon over to get your attention. And they don't actually spy on you with the spy balloon. They actually collect weather, and that way they can use the knowledge of our weather against us. I don't know how, neither does anybody else, not even the Chinese, but that's just how evil they are. There you go, we got it. Now, here's my point. Why Why? Why all of a sudden is there something coming out saying, the spy balloon, it wasn't a spy balloon, okay? It wasn't a spy balloon. We can't say it. We can't tell you straight out it wasn't a spy balloon, but here's what we're going to do. It wasn't spying on us. Almost like somebody's trying to turn down the volume a little bit. Let's go to the next one. And perhaps we can figure out what's going on here. Perhaps, perhaps not. Look at this. The same guy, General Milley, one day later. U.S. must do everything possible to avoid open armed conflict with China. If we don't modernize, then there's a chance that the Chinese will succeed in their geopolitical agendas using their military might. Now, here's the way I see this. If we don't modernize, now, what do we know? We know that there have been a numerous, at minimum a dozen and a half, but likely more, war games between the U.S. and China, where China went to take Taiwan and the U.S. tried to stop them. And then pretty much every one of them, the U.S. lost. And then so the U.S. changed the parameters on the last one, and it ended up, they called it a stalemate. So they changed the parameters on the war game so that they wouldn't lose, as they always did. And it ended up a stalemate, but the U.S. lost like hundreds of ships, bases, tens of thousands of people. But now, according to them, the Chinese took a beating, blah, 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 right? And one of the things they said, the world's economy was in tatters, and the U.S.'s ability to project its power around the world was severely crippled. And bottom line is this. Let's be frank about this. Milley's a military guy, and they're watching what's happening in Russia, and they're realizing something. If you go to the border of a superpower, that superpower has no supply lines. It is its own supply line. You go to the border of Russia, they can fire from their own airspace. They can fire from their own ground space. They can fire. They can come across the border and smack you in the head. They can go back across the border anytime they want. They got their factories right there, right out of the factory, ship it to the front lines, put it in artillery. Downrange it goes and it drops on your ass. That's what can happen with a superpower when you're on their border. So they're on Russia's border and things ain't going so well. And the U.S. knows if NATO decided to fight on Russia's border, things wouldn't go so well. I would imagine that all those hundreds of bases around the U.S. and around the EU and all over those places, that if the U.S. was to decide to go to war with Russia, they're all targeted with a whole lot of missiles, and it doesn't have to be nuclear. Though they are targeted with nuclear missiles, no doubt. I'm sure they're targeted with many, many, many conventional missiles, all of the radar stations, the anti-air, the airfields, all of that stuff. Any ships in the area, you can't bring an aircraft carrier within 1,700 kilometers of Russia's borders, because they're going to take you out with hypersonic missiles, and of course they can fire them from other vessels. So you got problems on Russia's border. You got horrible problems if you're going to go to war with Russia on their border. It ain't going to work out well for you. You're going to take a hell of a beating on day one. The first week is going to be a massacre, and you know it. They may take some hits, don't get me wrong, but you ain't never seen anything the kind of hits you're going to take from missiles. That being said, the industrial, and they're seeing that wars and it's about industry. Can you make things? Can you make more tanks? Can you make more ships? Can you make more this or that, right? And clearly the EU, the US, NATO can't match industrially. They can't match Russia simply because they've deindustrialized intentionally, because that's what neoliberalism does. It deindustrializes. So they can't match Russia industrially. So it wouldn't work well for them to have a war with Russia. What they would have to do to go to war with Russia is take a couple years to get all of their troops and all those things forward and get everything that they needed. And what do you think? Russia's going to sit there and wait for them to do it? They're going to flatten everything they can while it's happening. So it's not really a very much of an option. People are like, oh, NATO is practicing on Russia's border right now. They're 40,000 troops. 40,000 troops. That ain't going to get it done when you're looking on the Russian border. 40,000 troops are not going to get it done to go against a superpower anywhere in the world. So those 40,000 troops, they'd be going quickly in a war because of the hits they take from overhead, missile strikes, etc., air to air stuff, surface to surface missiles, on and on and on. And then, of course, overwhelming numbers on the Russian military. If they actually got into that, you got 40,000 people, and you got to bring lots and lots and lots more. And Russia's just not going to sit there and wait for you to get them there. And they're not going to leave your airfields intact so you can launch aircrafts against them. And they're not going to leave your ships intact. You know what I mean? So you're going to have a problem. Now, that being said, you may not know this. The United States produces about 5 Navy ships per year. China produces 200. The industrial potential of China is so great that if you go to war with them, the numbers of missiles that they can build, and they're going to send volleys of missiles, and you got a couple hundred bases. What happens if the Chinese just say every one of your bases is going to get 100 missiles an hour for 100 hours? After the first couple hours, you ain't got no, and they can do it to every one of your bases. Their ability to produce numbers of missiles, of surface to surface missiles, is so great that they can target everything that you have overwhelmingly and overkill with volleys of missiles. You're going to go to war with the Chinese. Man, the first day, the number of missiles to come in at the Philippines bases, the South Korean bases, the Japanese bases, you're going to get some overwhelming numbers of missiles coming at them. And they got a lot of stuff, and they're building a lot of stuff. You don't want that. You don't want that. And so I think Milley, certainly Jake Sullivan and Blinken and these people, they've never spent a day in the military in their life. They don't have a military concept. They don't have a concept of the consequences of their actions, right? The military does. The military has a concept of the consequences of their actions. Let's keep going. So he's saying if we don't modernize, there's a chance the Chinese will succeed using their military might. What is Milley saying? He's trying to get as close to as he can to telling the truth and keep his job. In the U.S., the Joint Chiefs of Staff can't come out and say, guys, if we go to Chinese border and pick a fight, we're going to lose this one in a hurry, and it ain't going to be pretty. He can't say that. So he has to say it in the best way that he can. And the best way is, well, if we don't make some changes in China, they could be successful and militarily overwhelm us. Not saying that'll happen. I'm just saying potentially if we don't modernize, maybe even if we do modernize, we don't want this fight. Let's keep going. The United States must do everything possible to avoid an open armed conflict with China, outgoing U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, said in an interview, right? You don't want a great power war. We need to make sure that we avoid one, Milley said in the televised interview. We should try our very best to avoid open armed conflict with the Chinese PLA, of which the most likely flashpoint is the island of Taiwan. The latter warned that the U.S. has already participated in 2 great powers, referring to world wars, referring to World War I and World War II. Now, here's what he also knows, and he knows good and well. If that happens, the odds are almost dead on. They're overwhelming. That what the United States is going to take their asses, get hit hard, and immediately somebody's going to scream, "We got to nuke them. We got to shoot nukes at them." And of course, at that point, it's game, set, and match. Because if you fire nuclear weapons at China, China's going to fire nuclear weapons back at you. If you use, as soon as it starts, if someone is ever attacked with nuclear weapons, they will respond with nuclear weapons, and you got a nuclear war. The other problem, I think, and he may really start to understand this, is, look, let me see if I can find something that you may need to see. Let's look at this one too. Lavrov to hold talks with Chinese foreign minister. Let's go down here a little bit. At the invitation of the Russian Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev, Wang Yi, a member of the blah, 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 will visit Russia on September 18 to 21 to hold the 18th round of Russia-China strategic security consultations, right? Strategic security consultations. Chinese foreign minister's visit to Russia is aimed at promoting the development of bilateral relations and exchanging views on security interest. The ministers will discuss strengthening cooperation in the international arena, right? So they go on. So what are we saying here? The Chinese and the Russians are talking. Now, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but last week, the chairman Kim Jong Un, the leader of North Korea, was in Moscow. He met with Vladimir Putin. He met with the Defense Secretary Sergei Shoigu. I talked about it on one of my other videos. He went to Roscosmos, the space station, which is interesting because the U.S. was doing some more. Military exercises, shall we say, provocations in the Korean Peninsula region. And for the first time, the so-called Space Force was involved, which means that a week later, the leader of North Korea touring the space center in Russia is probably not incidental. Okay. So what you have is 1 week, you got the head of North Korea in Russia, and he also looked at some hypersonic missiles, the MiG-31s that carry the hypersonic missiles, things of that nature. They talked about sharing technology. You know, Russia has some of the finest military technology in the world, and they may very well look at sharing some of it with North Korea, maybe even sharing hardware with North Korea, military hardware, some kind of military technical deals. Meanwhile, a week later, what do we hear? Wang Yi and Lavrov are going to meet. They're going to talk about security interests. Guess what's happening in October? Vladimir Putin's going to Beijing. He's going to meet with the President Xi. And you know they're talking security. You know they're talking military. So what you have now is Russia, China, and North Korea building a military triumvirate in the Asian Pacific. That basically, and here's the bottom line: China has supported Russia. And in my opinion, the way what China has supported Russia during the Ukraine war with what it has the most of, China's got money and no shortage of money. So they don't have to give them weapons. Russia don't need weapons. Russia's got its military situation handled. But what they do need is when other people stop buying stuff from them from the sanctions, they need somebody to sell it to. So the Chinese simply said, dude, we never run out of need for more weapon, for more stuff. Look at our, for more energy and gas and oil and things like that. So what China has been an economic backstop for Russia, where they've been a diplomatic backstop, where they've worked with Russia, they've worked around the world with Russia, with Lavrov and etc., and they've gotten things such as the rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran and things of that nature. So China and Russia have been working together because both know the bottom line. The neocons would be happy to take out Russia so they could get to China, take out China so they could get to Russia, whoever they want to take out Russia and China. Russia and China knows it, North Korea knows it. So they're building a military alliance. And as that alliance grows, in its capabilities, as it grows in its unity between these three nations, I think Milley's starting to look at that and recognize and say, look, man, when you notice you said a great power war, World War I, World War II. He's talking about a world war. Milley's looking at it and he's realizing something. Look, if we start swinging at China, North Korea and Russia are going to look at it and say, we can't let you win this one, even though you probably won't. But they're going to be standing at the door. North Korea and Russia will be standing at the door. There's no guarantee that Russia wouldn't enter the fray immediately, but they would be, in the starting blocks, ready to enter the fray. And if China needed, Russia would enter the fray, because what choice would they have? They know if the U.S. defeats China, it's coming after them, as does North Korea. So both of them would say, if China so much as stumbles, if China hiccups, we got their back. So that's why I think Milley's saying, look, we can't get involved in great power conflict and war. He doesn't just say China. He says we must avoid war with China. But then he goes on to say we got to stay out of great power conflicts. We've had World War I. We've had World War II. Do we really want to do this again? Keep in mind there are other things going on that you got to take into account. Let me find this one. There's another one. And I ain't finding it. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Let's look at this one. And I think it's consequential, okay? And I'll tell you why. Let's talk about it. I'll tell you why. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger form an alliance of Sahel states to advance collective defense, right? As an ECOWAS military threat looms over Niger, which I really don't think is going to happen, the three countries have formally declared that any act of aggression against one will be considered an aggression against all. The leaders of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have come to power and popularly back coups amid mass anti-French anger and rising insecurity in the Sahel, right? So I think that's important, and I think Millie's reading the tea leaves. We've got the Africans. God bless them. They're waking up. They've had enough, and they're looking at Ukraine. They're looking around the world. They see people throwing elbows back at the U.S. Empire, and they're saying they're weak. They're getting weak. They're getting soft. And so here's what we're going to do. Individually, you know the old saying, we got to hang together, because if we don't, we'll surely hang one at a time. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, certainly, you know, individually, they don't have a lot of military power. They have a military, but not a lot of power. What's going on now is they're coming together and they're saying, look, man, if you want to fight, it ain't going to be just coming in here and taking Niger. That's not happening. What you think, the French, you think you're just going to send your little puppets in here and you're going to take Niger and we're all going to sit around? We've had enough of this bull crap, man. You've been in here for the last 500 years, stealing every damn thing that ain't nailed down, taking our money, our uranium, and our gold. Ain't happening no more. Put it like this, you ain't getting it without a fight. You want to get it? Come on, let's dance. You're going to take it. We're not saying you ain't going to take it, but we're saying you ain't going to take it without a fight. You ain't going to hold it without a fight. What are you ready to do? So we see these alliances coming together against U.S. and European imperialism and colonialism. So now we, on one side, we see Saudi Arabia, the UAE, etc., joining BRICS and the Shanghai, Iran, etc. So we see countries starting. We see these various alliances starting to form, economic alliances, military alliances, and as I said, in Africa, that's only going to get broader. If they were to go after Niger, there'd be a nasty fight there, and some of the very countries that are puppet countries for France and the U.S. now would fall. They would fall to popular coups in the same manner. So Millie's reading the tea leaves, looking around saying, look, this is not just about China. Look, what happens if we go to war with China and some of these African countries say China's our number one ally, China's our people. You know what? The U.S. has bases here in China. We're going to fire some missiles at them. What happens if U.S. missiles in China start taking incoming? What happens now if Iran, Syria, etc. say, well, you know what, the U.S. has bases here and China's our boy. Hey, you know what? You're going to take some incoming. So now the U.S. missiles in the Middle East start taking missiles, start taking artillery, start taking incoming. Now you're at war. I've already said the U.S., the neocons are at war with the world, but now the world is at war with you. And Millie's looking at that. Notice, Millie doesn't say, if we go back, where is it? If we go back and we examine closely what Millie said and we look for, he says, where is it? America's most senior military officer, retiring Joint Chiefs of Staff Mark Milley, said that the largest shift in global economic power well over a century has happened with respect to China. The economics of the world have begun to shift. In the wake of that shift in economic power, the Chinese have invested a lot of money in establishing a world-class military. They want a military that's very capable in space, in cyber, and the traditional domain of land, sea, and air. They've developed fifth-generation fighter bombers, copying our designs. Yeah, right. I doubt that. And they're trying to develop a blue water navy like the United States, which is a maritime force capable of operating globally, essentially across the deep waters of open oceans. They're trying to establish a subsurface navy, reform their ground forces, blah, blah, blah. He goes on and on. And he says their goal is to exceed the United States military capabilities in East Asia. Well, yes, of course it is, because the United States is threatening them in East Asia. Yeah, hey, I'm going to kill you in East Asia. Hey, I better defend myself. Oh, my God, look what they're doing in in East Asia. They're trying to get themselves in a position where they can defend themselves. So Milley goes on and he talks about well, let me find it. So bottom line is this. Let's get back to it. If I can ever get the hell out of this screen. Let's get back to it. And that is Milley is coming to grips with the reality that look, I'm looking over in Africa and they're starting to buddy up together and they're playing with the buddy system and they're saying, you fight me, you fight my buddies. I'm looking at China. I'm looking at Russia. I'm looking at North Korea. They're starting to share weapons. He realizes that the United States is forming alliances against itself by pressuring everybody, threatening everybody. If you threaten everybody, then everybody, after a while, sees you as a problem. And the neocons, certainly the idiots, such as, speaking of idiots, my favorite idiot. Let's find him. Let me find him. There we go. Here's my favorite idiot. And I love this guy. Andy Blinken and the diplomacy deficit, right? His remarks to students this week shows how American exceptionalism and great power competition have taken over the craft. Now look at the difference between these people, right? His speech was titled "The Power and Purpose of American Diplomacy in a New Era," right? Blinken's conception of diplomacy does accurately reflect one thing: the Biden administration's policy of waging a two-front Cold War against the two, and this is what they call it, the two principal authoritarian powers. You got to use that, right? China and Russia, as laid out in the 2022 National Security Strategy, whether by ratcheting up tensions with the two Asian power. Whether by ratcheting up tensions with the two continental Eurasian powers, the policy has succeeded in making America and its allies in Europe and Asia safer remains an open question. And he went on to say that decades of relative global stability have given way to an intensifying competition with authoritarian powers, revisionist powers. Beijing and Moscow are working together to make the world safe for autocracy through their no limits partnership, right? He said, we inhabit a world where democracies are under threat. I inhabit a country where democracy is under threat. It ain't here. And the threat is twofold: Russia and China. There's a second threat, and that one is closer to home. From the inside, by electoral leaders who exploit resentments and stoke fears, erode independent judiciaries and the media, and rich cronies, he must be talking about Biden, crack down on civil society and political opposition. You got to love Tony Blinken. You got to love Tony Blinken. He's saying we have a threat here. As they charge Donald Trump with 5 bazillion charges, we got a problem here. They're cracking down on people, censorship possibly, and the political opposition. What kind of madman, moron, and authoritarian would charge his political opposition? I mean, hey, Tony, certainly not Tony Blinken, right? And so he goes on. So the bottom line is this. So as Blinken and Newland and these people say, we can't make a deal with Ukraine because all the Ukrainians aren't dead yet. That's basically what they're saying. We can't make a deal between Ukraine and Russia. Why? Because there's still Ukrainians alive. Now, after they're all dead, then it'll be a lot easier, really, if you think about it. Once the Ukrainians are all dead, I mean, there'll be nobody to stand in our way. We'll just do whatever we want. That's kind of the way Blinken and the neocons see it. And unfortunately for the Ukrainians, Zelensky, who's nothing but a mouthpiece for the neocons, and all of these idiots, Baerbock and all the rest of the EU puppets are down with that. They seem to all be down with, let's see how long. I mean, this is basically what they're saying. Let's see how long we can drag this thing out till we run out of Ukrainians. And yes, they're dying by the boatload, but there's a lot more of them to die. What's the rush? Take your time. That's kind of the way the neocons come. Take your time. There's a lot more Ukrainians to die. Yeah, who cares? Let them die. It's a sad state of affairs. but that's where we are. And so I think the General Milley, as he leaves, looks at these people and says, this is a friggin' disaster. These people are bad, bad news. And I'm going to say to the American people before I leave, look, I don't care what these mutts say. Do not go to war with China and Russia. Because if you do, it ain't going to be pretty. I mean, think about this. China's your number one trading partner. And if the US should go to war with China, of course, they got their puppets, South Korea and Japan, who are and Philippines, who will be pummeled. So what do you drive? A car from Japan? Yeah, bad news, you ain't getting no parts. You ain't getting no charge from Japan because it's going to be in the middle of a war with a giant, super giant, and it's going to be turned to flat. And no ships are going to be able to go in and out. 70% of the world's traffic would be stopped, of the world's commercial traffic would be stopped immediately. South Korea, what you got? They make chips, they make cell phones. Taiwan makes chips. What do you think you're going to get a chip for? You think you're going to be able to buy a car? That's out. Done. All car manufacturing, all manufacturing, everything that uses chips, which is everything, will halt manufacturing immediately. If the US went to war with China, first of all, we'd all be nuked, but let's just say we wouldn't. The world would be put back to the Stone Age. People would have to use things that don't have chips. They wouldn't be able to get chips anymore. Not from China, not from South Korea, not from Japan, not from Taiwan. No chips available because there'd be a war going on, and all the things you have. What do you have? Lawnmower? Look on the bottom of it at the stamp. Made in China, made in Japan, made in the Philippines, made in South Korea, whatever the case, that's out. All of those things coming, clothing from Bangladesh, all that. Sorry, all that stuff that traverses through over here, done. So the bottom line is Walmart goes out of business. Amazon goes out of business. All your retailers go out of business. All your malls go out of business. Everything goes out of business because everything is getting everything from China or somewhere in Asia. And it ain't coming across, which means the United States economy is done. In fact, it would be the destruction of the world's economy. If the US went to war with China, it would put the world economically, industrially back into the Stone Ages. It would reverse us. One good thing, it wouldn't be a lot of pollution other than the nuclear ash that was everywhere. But I think the first thing, if you look at it, that Milley is saying, and he's looking at this potential debacle, saying, if we go to war, man, we probably can't take China, but the odds are Russia and North Korea joins in. Guess what's happening in Africa? They start firing their bases. What happens if Iran, whoever in the Middle East, they just say, well, look, the U.S. is weak right now, and might I add, they're at war with China. So all the missiles and everything they have to go east. What's going to happen when they start running out of missiles, artillery rounds? They run out of ammo in the Middle East. What do you think is going to happen to the bases when they run out of ammo in the Middle East, when they start running out of ammo in Africa, when they can't get their fuel and supplies and all that stuff to their bases in the Middle East and Africa? They're all going to be destroyed. They're all going to be overrun. It's over. If it's not nuclear, then economically it's over for the U.S. empire. That's the end of the U.S. empire. What rises after that, blah, 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 who knows? But it sure as hell ain't us. We're done. And I think Milley's looking at that and he's saying, man, we can't do this, dude. We can't do this. It ain't going to work. And he's watching the people in Congress, these idiots and lunatics in Congress. He's watching the Kagan family, who pretty much dominate the Biden administration. Biden's running around here like his brain addled. He don't know what the hell's going on. Blinken and these idiots that blew up the Nord Stream. What are they going to do? Blow up something else? They're idiots. And of course, he's looking at the leaders in Europe. Annalena Baerbock, what's his name? Sunak, Rashid Sunak, as Biden calls him. These people are idiots. And so I think he's saying, I'm going to walk out the door, and on the way out, I'm going to say, hey, guys, yeah, you people are freaking idiots. Don't do it. Don't do it. And I don't think the message is just to them. The message is maybe also to us saying, look, guys, you got a bunch of crazy people running your country. You got to get them out of here. You got to get them out of here. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to look for the super chats. I'm looking for super chats. And I ain't seeing a lot of them, but I know there's some here. Okay. Let's start here. Okay. Eric says, selling F-35 slightly used could use some repair. Yeah, F-35 is a flying piano, dude. That's a piece of crap. But Eric knows it. It's a piece of crap, man. You'd be better off with the piano, actually. Nuclear war is the end of humanity. People are nuts, says Macarius 39. You are absolutely right. And there are those out there saying exactly what you're saying, my dear friend. Anything else? Nope, nothing else. Wayne Lopez over on Rockfin says, my wife had advanced cancer and none of the conventional therapy. Oh, for God's sake. He's the guy that always gives a link to Rick Simpson oil. I ain't saying Rick Simpson oil. I've heard lots of good things about it. But for God's sake, don't be in my chat selling shit. Let's see. Millie is talking up military spending that still can't beat China, but will earn him 2 or 3 board of directors seats. I think, yes, that's always an option there. It's always part of it, Sam. But remember, he's still saying, as it sits, man, this ain't a good idea. And he's saying we should avoid this. So I'm with you. General Millie Vanilli sings Baby Don't Forget My Number to Lockheed Martin GM Raytheon. And let's see, according to the supercomputer, Deep Thought, the answer to the question of life, the universe, and everything was 42. And I thought it was the smell of burnt almonds. A spy balloon was looking down the nuke silos. There you go. Yeah, exactly what it was doing, because God knows you wouldn't want to use them. I don't know, a satellite or anything to do that when you could use a balloon. Although it was looking down the nuke silos, but it wasn't registering anything, taking any information. So at any rate, thanks a lot, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Don't forget, I'm Giles, the last cobbler. Here, closed up 2 decades. It's hard to find decent shoes anymore. What are they talking about? Cobblers, for God's sake, in the chat. I must be boring people. Hey, I'm in the chat, like, and I'm like doing this show. I'm all excited about it. People are in the chat are like, I haven't had my horse shoed in a long time. You think you know a good person that could come over there? Yeah, I got to know a guy named Joe. I'll give him a call. I'm putting people to sleep, for God's sake. They're talking about shoes, horseshoes, cobblers, beach cobbler. I don't know what the hell. I'm out of here. By the way, somebody says, thanks, Garland. Thanks, Garland, in chat. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. And don't forget, rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. In case they toss me off YouTube, you can still find me there. Telegram. Follow me on Telegram. Patreon.com is an option if you want to help the channel, and you can. PayPal is an option. Buy me a coffee is always great. Don't forget, buy me a coffee is good. And you just go in there. It says, like, buy Garland a coffee for $5. How many do you want? And then now it's just like Patreon. It'll say become a monthly subscriber. And so buy me a coffee is great if you can afford it. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Oh, we got another super chat. And that is Cycle Adventure says the infographic show recently published a video claiming Mexico is a far larger trading partner with the U.S. by more than 6% of U.S. total imports. I guess, I don't know. It's a big trading partner, but trust me, getting the friggin' avocados ain't the same. All right. It's the stuff we're getting from China. Trust me when I tell you that. And everything else would be cut off too. All right. Thanks a lot, you all. Any new comments? Did I miss any? LOL, Garland looks to speak skunkworks. Meaningless comment. Man, you guys are just confusing me all the time. I love you, but I'm always confused. I guess because I can't watch the chat constantly. So I don't know what skunkworks means, but that's okay. I'm sure it means something important. May none of you ever reach any of the circles of hell. So what is anybody ever read Dante Alighieri, Dante's Inferno, where there was supposed to be a description of hell? And what was the name of the river? I'll give you a hint. There was a great band named after that. And the name of the river in Dante Alighieri's hell was Styx, Styx. And I used to love Styx. It was a great band. Anybody here like Styx? Styx was awesome. Didn't they make, was it Blue Collar Man that they made? But they made a lot of stuff. At any rate, all right. Thanks a lot, you all. Peace. I'm out.